Hi there, I'm Erich Mueller. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Geosciences at Southern Utah University. Standing here out next to Coal Creek at the bridge site as part of the field trip stops for your class. I'm here to talk a little bit about the river and how it works. So we're standing here next to Coal Creek, and the river is flowing down from the mountains. When we talk about where does the water in a river come from, it comes from the watershed of which it drains. Here in Coal Creek, the watershed extends all the way up to Cedar Breaks National Monument, up above 10,000 feet, and all the water and all of the tributaries that drain from between here and Cedar Breaks flow together to form the river, the creek, Coal Creek, which is a very important creek here in Cedar City for our water supply. Now, when we think about how rivers work, we're thinking about two things. The river moves water and the river moves sediment through the landscape. And so, if we look out at the river right now, we can see there are lots of boulders and big rocks on the bottom of the river. Now, they're, of course, not moving right now because there isn't very much water coming out of the river. So sometimes there isn't much happening in terms of the movement of sediment or even very much water coming through the river system. But during floods, when either we get a lot of snow melt or when we get big rainstorms that come down the river, the water will rise, the energy of the river will increase, and we'll get sediment moving. We'll get both erosion or removal of sediment, as well as deposition, where sediment piles up and accumulates on the stream bed. So you could think a little bit about how easy or how difficult it would be to move some of those rocks or boulders, and how it would take different floods to move those different sediments. Now, through all that erosion, Coal Creek has also carved Coal Creek Canyon. So this entire canyon has been carved over millions of years by these periodic floods picking up the sediment and eroding the riverbed through time. Now, that's made for a beautiful landscape here in Coal Creek Canyon, but floods can also cause problems for humans and for the city of Cedar City. Floods can also cause problems for people, flood houses, flood infrastructure, and so we also are concerned about flooding in Cedar City, and so we want to know how big of a flood is possible. And so the United States Geological Survey continuously records the stream flow or the amount of water coming out of Coal Creek at a stream gauge that is located just upstream of the bridge where we're standing. What we found from measuring the stream flow over time is that the biggest floods that come down Coal Creek come from thunderstorms that typically occur in the summer. Usually during the months of July or August or September, we get big thunderstorms and the water can come all rushing down and cause rapid flash floods. And that's often what we're concerned about when we're worried about floods impacting town and Cedar City. Now, when we think about water coming down Coal Creek, it's not just about carving the river canyon or causing floods in town. It's also about our water supply. So basically the majority of the water supply for Cedar City originates here at Coal Creek. And in fact, most of the water that comes out of the creek comes from snowmelt. So right now, there is a lot of snow up on top of the mountain in the headwaters or near the top of the watershed. Over the next couple of months, when we get into May and June, that snow is going to slowly melt and the river will rise. And that's a very important source of our water supply in Cedar City. Right behind me here is a structure where we can see the water of Coal Creek spilling over the edge. Now, this structure actually serves two purposes. One purpose is to divert water into an irrigation canal. That takes water off of the main river and sends it out towards Cedar Valley where people use it for irrigation. Another purpose of this structure is to slow down the river flow during floods. So again, during floods, the riverbed might erode, and by putting in these small dams, it sort of reduces the slope or energy of the river, and that helps reduce the effect of those floods might have in town. So when we think about our water supply in Cedar City, as I mentioned, a big component of it comes here from Coal Creek, but not only just directly from the stream itself, but also from springs and wells further up in the watershed. In fact, the city of Cedar City takes water from springs and wells and puts them in a pipeline, and they fill up tanks that sit here on the edge of Coal Creek Canyon. Those tanks are perched up at an elevation above the height of Cedar City, and thus, as those tanks fill with water, we can use gravity to simply feed the water supply down into the town. So when you turn on your tap at your house in Cedar City, that water is coming down under the force of gravity from these tanks that we see at the mouth of the canyon. Now, another very important aspect of Coal Creek in our water supply has to do with groundwater out in the Cedar Valley. In fact, a large part of our water supply is pumped from underground and used both for drinking water or for agriculture. But in order to have water underground and in an aquifer, as we call it, we have to recharge that water. We have to add water back in if we're going to take water out and use it for our water supply. And in fact, Coal Creek is one of the main sources of recharge of that aquifer. Coal Creek flows out into Cedar City, and the city has actually created structures that divert the water into big pits that allows that water to soak down into the ground and replenish the aquifer. And so ultimately, Coal Creek is the most important source of water for Cedar City, as well as the creator and the eroder of the beautiful Coal Creek Canyon that we see here before us.